Hey everybody, it's Tommy Canale and welcome back to Before the Lights podcast, the show to find out how those in sports, music, and entertainment made their mark. Let's get this show started. Go grab your coffee or get a drink and settle in. Today on the show is a former four-time Miss Nevada. She spent 10 years as a professional dancer and was one of the co-hosts of the Frank Rosenthal Show, better known as Lefty Rosenthal, you may recognize from the movie Casino. She's also done real estate. She's a licensed marriage and family therapist for the past 30 years, and also has experience in marketing, advertising, and hotel administration. Please welcome to the show, Pamela Payton. Pam, how are you today?
Well, I'm super. How are you today, Tommy?
I'm great. I am excited to have you on my show and talk about your life. It's interesting.
Well, I'm excited to be here. It's not something that I frequently do, and I hope I will be interesting.
I understand you were in Las Vegas. You were born, I understand, in Utah, correct? And then as a young child, moved to Las Vegas, and you were a devoted Mormon until age 16, right?
Well, I was born in San Francisco, and then 11 months later, we moved to Wichita, Kansas, and my sister was born. Then we moved back to Utah, and by the time I was 7, I moved to Vegas.
Got it. Devoted Mormon until age 16.
Oh, yes. My mother played the organ and piano at church, but once she remarried, I was the only one in my family who went to church. It was a big part of my life, and I was very devout.
Attended Rancho High School here in Las Vegas. What changed your mind, Pam, to go from being a devoted Mormon to going away from that religion?
Wow, that was really a crucial time, a pivotal moment, as they say. I was 16 years old, and I was always, honesty still today is the best policy with me. And the bishop interviewed me for my individual award, and he asked me if I was paying a full tithing, which is 10%. And I had been babysitting, so I said, well, I don't really do the math. I just give. And he denied me my individual award. And so that kind of made me a little angry. And then also I was thinking that I have a number of wonderful friends at Rancho High School that were not Mormon. And I thought, I started questioning the faith, that they're wonderful people. Why can't they go to the celestial kingdom? And so I started to research other religions.
Okay. And then you decided to get in other religions, and to this day, you don't practice Mormon, correct?
Well, I do highly revere a lot of principles of the Mormon faith, especially in building up the nuclear family. And I derived a lot of wonderful benefits during my time with the faith, and I still have a number of friends that are Mormon and relatives as well. But I started to research, so I've researched every and all religion. I'm universalist now. I mostly go to the Self-Realization Fellowship here in Malibu.
How did you get started in beauty pageants?
Well, when I was 16 in high school, Rancho High, they had a highlighter program, and I was selected to be in that. And then they were choosing one highlighter from each high school, and I didn't make it. But it really turned me on to modeling, so I asked my mom if I could take modeling lessons. And she said, honey, I have to let you know there are a lot of really pretty girls, and you are very nice looking, but that's a very bad world, and you could, not to really benefit yourself by it. So we're not going to really invest the money and time in that direction. So when I turned 18, I had bought my own car at 16. I was working as a secretary by then. I'd been babysitting, sewed my own clothes, and then I bought my own and was an all-white Mustang. And I just, realized that I was going to do these things on my own. And I went to Bernie Lenz Modeling, which is the biggest agency, and I took private lessons from her. And then I was in her book. And so somebody from a hotel came in and saw me in the book and asked me if I would represent his hotel in the Miss Nevada pageant.
In 1975, you won Miss Nevada World. You also won Miss Nevada Universe. And what else did you win in Nevada?
Well, my very first one was just kind of like a junior league, I think it was, or something, and I didn't win that at all. Then I went into, if I remember right, I think it was Miss Nevada World, and then I won that one. I was Miss Bicentennial 1976 with a Paul Revere hat with a crown on it. And I was first runner-up in Miss Nevada USA, I think it was. So did I leave anything out? I probably should have researched before I came on here.
What kind of doors did that open for you after you started winning some of these beauty pageants?
Well, I did a lot of different modeling gigs. There'd be photographers coming in from New York or whatever, and I really enjoyed all that. And I met Wilhelmina, and I was looking to, at age 24, that's when I was in the Miss Nevada World pageant, do I want to move to New York? So I had a big tri-level home at the time, and I was involved with a gentleman, and we were building up his shops in major hotels. And I thought, do I really want to leave all this to go to New York when Wilhelmina is telling me she retired at 27, and that you have to start really young. That was how it was at the time. And it was another pivotal moment, and I made a decision that even though she was willing to sign me, I just stayed in Vegas.
So the question is, you end up becoming a showgirl. How does somebody go from being a devoted Mormon to being a topless dancer?
Oh, boy. Yes, I think that probably baffles even me sometimes. Well, what's really amazing, I was working in diamonds, and I don't know why they stuck a young girl in the men's department, but Frederick Apgar, who was the producer of the Casino de Paris show and Viva Les Girls at the Dunes Hotel, which is where Bellagio now is, came in, and he was with Sandra Dornini, his assistant, and both of them said, you should be a showgirl. And I said, well, what's that? And they told me, and I said, well, I had taken myself to Margaret Ketchum for dance lessons, but I didn't think much could come of it. And so I came home and I told my sister, and she said, let's go look into it. And she's 11 months younger than me. So we got in my all-white Mustang, and we started driving down the Strip. Never been there before other than to see Flower Drum Song and South Pacific at the Thunderbird. And then we stopped in the Stardust, and all of a sudden we saw all these people rehearsing for a new show, and they put us on the stage, and we had to follow the choreographer, and I was able to do that, and she wasn't. So I was hired, but she wasn't. So we thought, well, let's go look into another hotel. And we stopped at the Dunes, and I said, well, this is where these two gentlemen said. And we just wandered into the showroom looking for them. And Pat McKegney, the line captain, was rehearsing someone on the stage. And she said, well, why don't you come in tonight? So then I came in that evening with my sister. And, she saw both of us and saw us move, and she again hired me and not her. And I asked if I could sit in and watch the show. And when I was there, I asked about the show. What is it like? And I met some of the show people, and I thought, the body is beautiful. And I don't think that it was, the shows were done in such excellent taste. They had the Louis XIV number, and everybody was out in jewels, and the costumes were just amazing. And I thought, oh, what a wonderful thing to be a part of this.
So I want to back up. You have this white Mustang. What year was this thing?
It was 65.
I'm picturing an all white Mustang and you and your sister going down the old Strip, going into casinos. So I'm sure that car stood out.
Yeah, that was the thing to do. Cruise Fremont Street before they had the canopy. And then you get to the Union Plaza Hotel and you do a U-turn, and then you act like when the guys are noticing you that you don't have the time of day for them. And then you go down to the Blue Onion further south on Fremont Street, and then you hang out and you have the hamburger and the vanilla cream soda, forget what it's called, at the Blue Onion.
That's bringing back some old memories of driving down Fremont Street. I can remember that myself. Pam, what was it like being a Vegas showgirl? What were the challenges of being a showgirl?
Oh my goodness, what was it like? Each show I gave a different kind of an ambiance and experience. I would have to say, when I first went into the show, I was really Pollyanna Pam. Like I said, I was a virgin. I was very naive. And there were some seasoned showgirls that some of them could maybe not be very nice. And it took me a while to realize that because I was 18 and very naive. I remember I once went in the bathroom and I saw a toothpaste tube just squeezed really weirdly, and I came out and I showed them. I said, "Look at this toothpaste tube, everybody! Isn't this hilarious?" And they turned around and looked at me. It was like, and then they went back to their makeup, and I thought, oh, I'm in a different world here. And it took me a while to find those certain people that, and still to this day, I'm connected to those same certain people that were wonderful.
And how heavy are those costumes?
Oh my goodness. Okay, so my first show was Viva La Girls. They didn't have an opening in the big showroom where the Casino de Paris show was. And Paul Anka really loved the Viva La Girls show. And I sat next to Cassandra Peterson, who later on became Elvira. And so she was, very sweet, delightful person. But my time in Viva La Girls was very short because I wanted to be in the big showroom. And then once I got over there, they had this flying staircase. It comes down from the ceiling and touches another staircase on the bottom floor. And so the upper stairs are very narrow. And, we're tall women and we have bigger feet. So my feet were size 8.5, but I would say that, some women had size 10 feet, and you have to wear heels. And then you're coming down the stairs to the beat of the music. And we had to wear this feather cape where our arms go through the holes, and then we wrap the cape around a fishnet thing that goes over our entire body. So mind you, the opening number could have four parts to it. We come out with a tuxedo on, with a cane, and we're dancing. Then we rush off and we're tearing off our costume, and we're running up the stairs to put the cape on, and then we're going to be showing our topless look. And so we're about 3 steps behind each person as we're coming down the center of the stage, and then we peel off to go to stage right or stage left and pose. Sometimes we're going to hear a thump, thump, thump where the person's heel hit the stair, they've fallen down, and they're coming down the stairs. And you just hope it's not going to be a domino effect and knock everyone down. And so one evening it happened to me that my heel hit and I went down on my shins, and I couldn't put my hands to break my fall because my arms were lifted up into the cape. And so I just went down the stairs. And when I got to the bottom, I managed to push myself up and then go towards the audience and smile. And then I peeled off to stage right, and I just went off the stage. And all of my legs were all, bleeding and cut up, and my mouth was shaking from the impact of it all. And I was even afraid, can I really go back and be in this show? Because those stairs really scared me.
I'll bet.
Fell after that. I did continue with the show, and it's amazing how some of us, you can't see the stairs when you're going down them. It's dark up there, and you have the cape crossed, and so you're looking out at the audience, and you're coming down the stairs with heels really fast. It's just amazing that we're just not falling all the time.
How many different shows did you perform in?
Well, when I was in the Dunes, then I went to the Lido, and then I went over to the MGM, which is now Bally's, and was in Hallelujah Hollywood. And then I went back to the Lido again, and then over to I went back to the Dunes, then over to the Lido again, and that was it. So in a period of from 18 to 30.
When you were at the Lido, is that how you learned about the Frank Rosenthal show and got connected into being a co-host?
Well, yes. Frank Rosenthal, he was trying to become licensed to the Gaming Control Board, and he found a loophole where if he can be an entertainer, then he could be licensed just like Frank Sinatra. So he created his own show, and he usually worked out of the sports book in the Stardust, and he was the president and various other offices over 3 hotels. And, he was holding himself out to be the entertainment director of the Stardust. So he was very involved in, with all of us show people. We had to be a certain weight as well. So we had to be a certain height and weight, and he would weigh us. And he would overlook Madame Bluebell coming in and Dawn Arden and managing the show. And so he knew that I'd been Miss Nevada. And he was lucky to put his show on now at Paul Anka's Jubilation, a restaurant and nightclub.
Right.
And he interviewed me, and when he chose me, I said, well, what am I supposed to do? And he said, well, just be there and just be yourself. And that was all the instructions I received.
Before we go into that show, because I want to ask you some questions about that show at Jubilation, what was Frank Rosenthal like to you?
Very gentlemanly. He was always very polished, very immaculate in his appearance, very reserved, almost stoic. Of course, I'm communicating with some of my main friends, which were some of the principals in the show. And he had this thing that he would go to certain restaurants that he favored, and he would ask of them that they join him. And so that was the thing to do that they felt that they had to do in being in the show. And so I know that some of them kind of resented it, that they felt that they had to be part of his entourage, so to speak. And so even when he was in Paul Anka's Jubilation, there was this whole area that was reserved, and he would always have the top principals in the show seated there. And then he would ask different people from like Jeff Kutash's Splash and from the show to perform in the nightclub to be a part of his show.
And what was his wife, Geri, like? How much interaction did you ever have with her?
Well, one time he had a party at his place in the country club, and I was really expecting a huge mansion, but it was kind of a townhome that was separate and very nice. It was amazing amount of security inside, outside. We could see the various cameras, and that was new to me because this was, in the late 70s. The place was very kind of contemporary, modern, very neatly decorated, and we could see pictures of the two children, and just very down to earth, very nice. Matter of fact, I had a party in my own home. I had a tri-level, and Frank was just so down to earth. He came to it. So here's the show, people, and I got valet parking much to my neighbor's chagrin, to help park the cars. And it was a potluck, and Frank Rosenthal came to my little house party.
And for those people that may not know much about Frank Rosenthal, or perhaps not seen the movie Casino, he operated 4 casinos. He was married to Geri Rosenthal. She unfortunately died at 46 of a drug overdose. Pam, have you ever heard anything? I know you've been gone out of it for a while, but have you heard anything that Geri and Frank may have been informants for the FBI?
Well, I read a lot in general, and I've certainly read a lot regarding Howard Hughes, the history of Vegas, Casino. I was reading Casino, the book by Nicholas Pileggi, at 1 a.m. in the morning, and I turn a page, and here's the dialogue between Frank and myself about, I think, 3 pages that was highlighted in this book, and I realized, oh my goodness, this Pam Payton is me. He's writing about me in the book. I never even knew. Nobody said anything. It was, darn it, he misspelled my name. It's Payton, not Peyton. And so, yes, I've heard different rumors and things. I don't know exactly. There was just only certain things presented to me. And I do know that as time was progressing, he was being called back to Chicago a lot, and he was getting into more heat because he was bringing too much attention to himself and trying to become licensed. And the mob does not want that.
No, they did not.
Frank was somewhat transparent, and he could be somewhat revealing as to the things that were irritating him. So during the show, for instance, Geri came over to him, and she was clearly had drank too much, and Frank was being somewhat constrained in not. I could see that he was trying to exercise a lot of tact in knowing how to answer some of the things, her insecurities that she was bringing to him while being in during the show.
That show started in 1977. It was on Channel 13, 11 p.m. on Saturdays, as you mentioned earlier, from the Stardust Sports Book. Pam, did you get paid for this job, or was it just something you were doing on the side?
Well, when I did it, it wasn't from the Stardust Sports Book. The other 2 assistants prior to me, they did it from there. One was Donnie Gilbranson. The other one was Angela. I don't know. She was a principal. I always forget her last name. And then I did it from Paul Anka's Jubilation, and there was no money involved. I was asked if I wanted to do it, and I thought, well, this will be challenging. I'm not sure how it's going to work out because he's not giving me any guidance on what he wants me to do. He just says, be yourself. It was a little scary. What
did you think the show was going to be like in comparison to what you found out it really was?
I think it turned out okay. I have 3 videotapes just to look at it. Sometimes I cringe a little bit at some aspects of the show. When I was reading those few pages in Casino, I realized that well, maybe Nicholas Pileggi is emphasizing how, inane some of the dialogue was. Like Frank would want me to read letters that were supposedly sent to him to do with betting in the sports book and things like that. And some of it seemed a little bit boring to me because I'm just not at all into sports. But I went with the program until he didn't want to do it anymore.
The show, as you said, was at Paul Anka's Jubilation. It was a $3 million, 10,000 square foot Las Vegas restaurant disco that was across from what is now Planet Hollywood. The property is part of the Marriott Vacation Club's Grand Chateau. And at one time was the Shark Club years later, where I actually did some work through a radio station back in the day. So I'm familiar with the inside of the building. There was a disco night show that was filmed there at 3:30 in the morning. And I actually recently just saw it. And I'm going to put a link to it in the show notes for people to get a look at if they're curious of what the show was like. Talk about that disco night show.
Well, usually the action, and even still to this day, doesn't happen much in discos until it's like 2 a.m. in the morning. So I usually would go to the Jubilation around 2. Of course, when it was the Frank Rosenthal show, he just held one side of the area to himself in the show, and other people could come and dance. But they were limited with when they could because on those evenings that he did his show, it was all about his show. So I'm not aware of that 3 a.m. Disco thing. I'm sorry to say.
That was the night that Geri Rosenthal was dancing with a host that you were co-hosting with. I can't remember his name. They might have called him Mr. X. She was seated with Siegfried and Roy that night, and they introduced, Lefty went over and introduced Siegfried and Roy and had some dialogue with Geri, and then she did a dance number with the gentleman they were talking to.
Yes, that's Jeff Kutash, and he was a producer of A Splash and the Jeff Kutash Dancers, and they would perform as part of Frank Rosenthal's show. And when Geri came over to him to talk to him, she was concerned about the fact that, Jeff Kutash is about half her height. She's very tall, statuesque, and she'd had a lot to drink. And part of the plan was that she was going to dance with him during the show, briefly to a certain song, and then the other people from his show would come on stage and take over from there. When it got time to go to the editing room, I really was very keen on the whole process. So I went into the room and they're wondering, how are we going to somehow edit this to make it look good? Because it just looked like Jeff Kutash wanted to look good at her expense. And so he was kind of whipping her around, and it was obvious that she knows how to dance and managed to hold her own, but it did look awkward.
The show was filmed there. How many shows did you guys film then from Jubilation? Did you do one a week, or did you film multiple shows at once? How'd that work?
It was one a week, and I think there was, I don't remember the exact number, I think maybe as many as 7. I only have 3 copies that a friend of mine just said, hey, by the way, I taped 3 of the shows. And I thought, well, thank you, because I didn't do that myself back in the day.
I have a rare story. Not many people can say they saw the inside of the Howard Hughes room at the Desert Inn. If you would tell us what that room was like and how did you get in there?
You're so cute, Tommy. When I was Miss Nevada, I met some really key people, wonderful people that are very involved in the state. And there's so much more to Vegas than the gambling part. When I used to work for the Chamber of Commerce and bring members into the chamber, and all of Las Vegas is one Chamber of Commerce, which is so different from LA, where there's, Culver City has a chamber, every different place has a chamber. Fred Lewis was a newsman, and he was one of the judges of one of the contests, and he became a dear friend of mine. And he was doing PR for Suma Corporation, which is Howard Hughes' corporation. And so he said, after we had lunch and talked, he said, let me show you something. And he took me back into the main executive suites, and he showed me this room that was like a walk-in closet, and it was all lined with lead, and it had all of these kind of knobs and electronic devices. And he said this was the secret room. Howard Hughes was very kind of paranoid about anything he might be saying on the phone. And so this is where he did, his communications when he needed to. And also the executives. Very interesting.
It's not this big elaborate room that people may envision. It's a smaller room.
Well, to make it like it was, which was so high tech at the time, I'm sure, but and then lined with lead. I mean, it was just some kinds of ways that they had to create and protect the room that nobody else could be able to get access to the information.
And how did you come across paths with Liberace?
Liberace is such a wonderful man. First of all, my tri-level home was just 2 blocks from him. He'd taken about 4 houses and remade them. Why he didn't decide to create his own mansion outside like Siegfried and Roy and Wayne Newton, I don't know, because he certainly had enough money. But he chose to do that. It was very elaborate. And the movie that was done with Michael Douglas so depicts his life with his boyfriend Scott, because there was a number of times I was around Liberace and Scott. And so that movie and documentary was very true to them. So my very best friend, Romy Hamas Mowbray, his grandfather had owned a lot of land in Las Vegas. And so his brothers went into law, as his father was a Supreme Court judge, and he decided to go and develop the real estate, where the Boulevard Mall is and various other places, Forest Hills and on Oakey and various places. So I went into real estate during the day while I was dancing in the shows at night to help, back him up on his properties. And that was like 30 years of bad luck in 3 years because the market just was not good then. And Liberace decorated all the different models. He got involved that way, and he bought one of his. It was called the All White House that was over there around by Oakey, and that's how I kind of met him and got to know him, is through Romy.
In 1980, you moved to L.A. Why did you decide to leave Sin City then?
When I went to UNLV and I majored in hotel administration, all the while I was dancing in the show, and I was the first female convention coordinator at the Aladdin. And I was then told about 8 months after I was employed that the president was not happy that they had hired a female, because he felt that how can I really wine and dine the clients appropriately and connect them with hookers if they want hookers, because of course that's not going to be my style. And he kind of feels that's part of wining and dining and bringing in the conventions, the businesses. And so I realized this is really a casino convention aspect of hotel business. So I started sending my resumes out to different places, and I looked at LA, and I was hired by Renaissance Hotel Management to be a director of sales of their 3 Beverly Hills hotels. L'Hermitage, Le Parc, and Le Bellage and Le Mandarin were eventually added.
So you were in charge of 3 properties in Beverly Hills.
Well, the director of sales,
Yeah.
and then there was the Ashkenazi brothers that owned them that were developing these other hotels, Le Bellage and Le Mandarin. And I remember I was working till 7 o'clock at night, and one of them approached me and started to try to kiss me. And I put my hand up and I said, "Please don't." And the next day I was let go. And so I have to tell you that in all my different years of working in various different capacities, even when I was in the men's department at Diamonds, the Me Too thing that is so prevalent now, I can definitely have my stories to tell regarding that.
That's a shame to hear that. But, it was a thing. And unfortunately, I'm glad it's being brought out and there's attention to it so we can get it to a stop. Pamela, being the director of sales for Renaissance Hotel Management in Beverly Hills, was there a lot of pressure to that job, or were you just kind of fielding calls of people wanting to do stuff with the Hotel Management Corporation?
Well, when you're involved with different hotels, there's different aspects of it. When I was in Las Vegas, they divide them up. So you're trying to cold call associations, and that they meet in Vegas. And then there's the major corporations where they're putting on these big conferences and things. And, so you're trying to look at various aspects of the business, sometimes just even booking weddings. So when I was then in Beverly Hills, we're looking at a very different kind of market, because those hotels did not have huge meeting rooms. So it was, but still I would go around to travel agents, and it was interesting. And but the main aspect of it that I really liked was advertising marketing. So I left after that situation happened where they let me go the next day, and I was quite devastated, I called the labor department, and they said, well, it's just he said, she said. And I said, you mean I don't have any recourse for somebody doing this? And they said, no, not at all. So obviously the laws have greatly changed since then. And then I went to Fitcomb Building Honig, and I was hired as an account executive for the fact that how the banking industry was changing. And I got involved in marketing and advertising, and I came back to Vegas, and I thought, well, let me just start at the first hotel at the end of the strip. So I went to the Hacienda, and I was hired on the spot to be a director of sales there. And then I went promoting that hotel. And when I was out promoting it, I ran into the owners of a large ad agency in Reno, and they said they wanted to open a Las Vegas office. And so I went with them, and I brought in the state of Nevada tourism account, and I'd fallen in love with somebody in LA. And after about 2 years, I gave notice and moved back to LA again.
Did you stop then modeling and everything after you got out of being a showgirl? Was that all over with then at that time?
Yeah, it was. I would have to say from 18 until 30, it was all about, getting my degree, being a Las Vegas dancer, showgirl, modeling. I helped my boyfriend from a warehouse to 5 major hotels, and there's no way that I could have been with him unless I traveled and buying trips and bringing things into his shops. And that was a kind of an interesting backstory to it all.
What were your thoughts, and I'm not sure if you were in Vegas or you were in Beverly Hills or in LA, when you heard that Frank Rosenthal's car had been bombed in 1982?
Oh my goodness. It was such a shock. Those are places we always go to eat, Tony Roma's and the fact that he lived through that. When you see the pictures of the car and just the design of the car and the fluke of the matter that he should have survived that. And, so all of that was depicted in the movie Casino very accurately, I felt. There's so much about that that was right on the mark. By the way, when I was in the Rosenthal show, I met Tony the Ant Spilotro. And sitting down, he was, just maybe a little bit taller than myself. So he's a very, very short guy, but very immaculately dressed, very charming, and never would have thought him to be. Many of Rosenthal's entourage, many of them were Italians. Rosenthal himself was not Italian. He was Jewish. He didn't look anything like Robert De Niro. I think Geri could say that Sharon Stone looked a lot like Geri. She was definitely very beautiful. But you see these people around them, they just seem like everyday people. You never think that they do these other things, part of the mafia. So
you didn't think that from your interactions with Tony Spilotro that he was a mob killer or a hitman?
Not at all. It's so amazing. But when I was 26, I was on a capital murder case, and the guy had blonde hair and blue eyes. And, there were these huge pictures that were very vivid of the crime scene and of catching him. And then I realized, wow, I used to pick up hitchhikers and leave everything unlocked. And after that, I realized, don't be thinking that the world is all nice people. You've got to be careful. They can look really nice, but then they do these bad things on the side. Very
true. Pam, what are some of your hobbies these days?
Well, my therapy has always been, I do a lot of reading. I'm an avid reader. I probably read about 3 books a week. If it's 1,000-pager, then maybe it might take me a month. And then I do arts and crafts. So I've always, sewn and needlepoint and designing things and photography. So many different things that interest me. And I'm, studying. I have a number of different certificates and different things. So there's just so many things about life interest me, and travel. Love to travel.
So you keep yourself busy. I understand you went to Phillips Graduate Institute, and what did you study there?
When I was 35, I went to Paris, and I'd always longed to go there. I had missed out on a 10-country tour with Bluebell, and I thought, okay, well, I put aside college 1 year to go on this tour, and it was canceled. Let me get this college thing done. And then later on, when I turned 35, I went to Paris and for 6 months, and when I came back, I kind of spoke enough French to talk like a 4-year-old, and it very much interested me. But I realized there it was like a sabbatical. I read the Bible and the meaning of Buddhism, and I did the Michelin guidebook walks. And I decided if I could get paid to be a therapist and help people, especially children, how wonderful that would be. So I came back and I looked into master's programs. And once I got my master's degree, 37, then I went to work for the Department of Children and Family Services for almost 15 years as a social worker and built up my private practice on the side. Married, had my daughter. That's a boy, is that another book?
Well, Pamela, I want to say thank you for being on my show today and being able to come on and talk a little bit about your life and some of the things that you've experienced and sharing these with my listeners. I really appreciate it.
Well, I appreciate you inviting me. It's my pleasure. Thank you so much, Tommy.
For show notes, go to our website, beforethelightspod.com, click on episodes, and you can get show notes there. Follow us on Instagram at Before the Lights Podcast. If you'd like to become a sponsor, we'd like to talk to you. Get a hold of me and send me an email, beforethelightspod@gmail.com. That's beforethelightspod@gmail.com. Thank you for listening to Before the Lights. I'm Tommy Canale. Until next time, everybody, a salute, a chin chin.